Welcome everyone. In my quest to make a video on every boss in old school RuneScape, we've arrived to Cerberus. This guide is jam-packed. I took a good look at all of the Arceuus spells that are useful here, and there's even a spot for reliably skipping the lava pools when ghost skipping. All in all, I put in a lot of work to this guide, so I hope you enjoy it. Just remember, please leave a like or subscribe if anything in here was useful to you. Cerb only has two hard requirements. The first is that it must be killed on a Slayer task, and the other is having 91 Slayer, but you can start killing Cerb at level 86 by using Wild Pies. While 86 is the minimum, I wouldn't recommend trying this boss at least to level 88 to give you more time between pie boosts. For combat stats, I recommend having at least base 85s in melee and range with then 70 or 74 prayer respectively for piety and vigor. I highly suggest getting 80 agility for the quickest shortcut, but there is a slightly longer shortcut that you can use at level 70, so you can get by with at least level 65 and a summer's pie. Now, there is a route you can take that doesn't require agility, but it's quite long, so I don't recommend coming to Cerb at lower agility levels. I also recommend having 80 magic and access to the Arceuus Spellbook as it has a variety of useful support spells. Just note you will need to complete a Kingdom Divided to use all of the following spells. First up, we have Ward of Arceuus, which has the lowest magic requirement at 74, and this spell grants a 10% damage reduction to demons. Who doesn't love taking less damage? 76 magic will unlock Greater Thralls. Despite needing 3 runes, the Book of the Dead, and consuming 6 prayer points, these spells can significantly speed up your kills and in some instances even help extend your trips. Then at 80 magic we get Death Charge, which restores 15% spec energy upon slaying an NPC. 92 magic unlocks Sinister Offering, which will give 330 prayer experience per ash dropped by Cerb, and one cast can consume up to 3 ashes for a total of 990 experience. That's 3 times the prayer experience. Alternatively, you can sell or spread the ashes by hand or passively with an Ash Sanctifier, unlocked by completing the Koran Hard and Elite Diaries, which automatically spread the ashes at half and full XP respectively. For gear, you can see what I take here on the left, and potential downgrades are on the right. Now, what I consider to be non-replaceable items are the Arc Light, Slayer Helm, Fire Cape, and the Imbued Berserker Ring. Unfortunately, my alt didn't have a charged Arc Light, so just go ahead and ignore that. But I will say, in terms of melee weapons, the Arc Light is best in slot. The next best weapon is a Rapier at 100 mil. Followed by a Bludgeon at over 20 mil, and finally a Hasta at 10 mil. Better melee gear includes the Inquisitor's gear and the Mace or the Scythe. For downgrades, we have the Fury, Darok's top and bottoms, Barrow's gloves, a standard War Blessing, and a Dragon Defender along with Guardian Boots. Now, if you're unaware, Guardian Boots have a -1 strength over Dragon Boots, but they offer much more defensive stats and +3 to prayer. At the time of this video, they cost roughly 2 mil if you want to consider taking those as well. As for the inventory, this is what I currently take when I go to Cerb, and it includes all of the runes needed for the various Arceuus spells, and on the right is what I took before adding in those spells. But perhaps the most important item here is the Spectral Spirit Shield. It has a passive ability which halves the effects of prayer draining effects, like the one we'll be seeing in Cerb. Although pricey at 58 mil, it will save a ton of prayer, extending trips and even saving some GP in the long run. Now, you can always sell it back like I do after you've finished your task. Dragon Claws are the best spec weapon provided you're not using a scythe. If you are, then the next best in slot is going to be the Bandos Godsword, and considerably cheaper, so I imagine this is what most people will take. From there, you can downgrade to either the Dragon Dagger Poison ++ or the Saradomin Godsword. While the DDS is considered to be better than the SGS, you might prefer it for the prayer restoration if you're using Thralls. I personally take a Torture and Blood Fury. If my HP is above 80, I wear the Torture, and below 80, I wear the Blood Fury. If you're not aware, the Torture is the best amulet offensively for melee, but it doesn't provide any defensive bonuses. The Blood Fury, when using melee, has a 20% chance of passively healing the player for 30% of the damage they deal. So if you hit a 40 and the spec procs, you would heal 12 HP. You're welcome to take both or simply just bring one. If you're not using Divine Pots, then make sure you also pray Preserve. For me, I take 10 Sharks and 6 Prayer Pots, and I find this usually gets me 6 to 7 KC a trip. Do note you may need to bring a Summer's Pie if you intend on boosting for either the level 80 or level 70 shortcut. Ranged is more straightforward, and I have much less to say about it. The best option here is going to be the Twisted Bow, which only slightly outperforms the Arc Light. Below both of these options is the Boa Ferradinin, I believe is how it's pronounced, followed by the Blowpipe with at least Amethyst Darts. Overall, melee is the better option, but ranging is a decent option if you're looking to avoid using Arclight charges or want an easy kill for the anti-bite mechanics task, which requires you to not take any damage during the fight. If ranging, I would highly suggest bringing dragon knives with your spectral shield so you can continue to damage Cerb during the ghost special phase where you will have to equip the shield. There are two primary ways to reach Cerb, which I've highlighted via the blue and green path, with blue being the quickest. You can either start from Taverley by putting your POH there or from Falor. Some players prefer the Falor teleport since it has a nearby bank. Just remember to precip a stamina pot dose prior to running over if you're starting from here. If you're starting from Taverley, you won't need it provided you stick to the blue path. From the dungeon, you can use either the level 80 shortcut path or the level 71. Now, once you're in Cerb's dungeon, there are 3 rooms with a wrench to click on in order to enter. Do note that these rooms aren't instant, so you might have to hop worlds now and then to find a free room. With all that out of the way, we can finally focus on killing Cerb. First up, we'll start with the basic attacks. Cerb randomly attacks using magic, range, or melee. Here's what a magic attack looks like. It's a short, black reflective orb with some lines around it that'll kind of whoosh towards you. Range looks more silver and has various horn-like protrusions coming from it. Melee is simply a nice head poke, and it has the quickest animation of the 3 attacks. Now, since these attacks are random, you want to pray magic until a special attack phase occurs. This gives us a nice transition to the first of Cerb's 3 special attacks, the combo attack. Cerb's combo always starts with magic, followed by then range, and finally a melee strike in rapid succession. While Cerb will do this attack at various points in the fight, she will always use the combo on her first attack. So your starting prayers should be magic, and then obviously piety or rigor depending on your style, and then preserve if you're not using divine pots. Each attack has a 2-tick delay, or 1.4 seconds, so if you're quick, you can avoid all damage by praying correctly. In order to do this properly, obviously you'll start the kill with magic turned on. When you see the magic orb, swap to range, and then when you see the range orb, swap to melee, and then quickly back to magic as her follow-up attacks will be normal. Now, in the middle of a kill, and also as well at the beginning of the kill, she has a long pause before attacking with her combo, which we can see here. First, she dips her head in, and then waits before doing the magic attack. This false-like animation is your cue that the combo is coming. Just remember, magic should be on, so pray range when you see the orb, and then pray melee when you see the range ball, and again, back to magic. In all honesty, after the first attack, I usually end up tanking these just because I don't pay enough attention, but for lower defense levels, you do want to pay attention for this. Other than that, if you're uncomfortable with Cerb's mechanics, wait until after her combo happens to use your special attack. But as you practice, try using it beforehand. So you'd go in, use your spec, quick weapon swap, then click back on the boss, and then swap over to the prayer book and get ready to change. As you get experience with this boss, you'll find there's plenty of time to do it all without really worrying too much. Next up are the Summoned Souls, or Ghost Attacks as they're commonly called. So this phase is triggered when Cerb does the arooo overhead sort of thing, and this is without a doubt Cerb's most difficult phase. But do note, Cerb will never spawn a ghost phase when she has more than 400 HP. Now, there are 3 ghosts, and they always spawn in a random order. Each one corresponds to a different attack type, and you need to pray accordingly. As you can see here, red is for melee, green is for range, and blue is for magic. This just happened to be the spawn order for this picture, but we'll see other variations too. Now, this is where the Spectral Spirit Shield comes into play. If you pray incorrectly, each ghost will deal 30 damage, so a max of 90 damage. If you pray correctly, you will lose 30 prayer points instead. Now with the shield, that number is cut in half, so each ghost will only drain 15 prayer points for a max of 45 instead of 90. So overall, this can be quite a deadly phase to mess up. The good news is that you don't need the full 90 or even 45 points to pass this phase unharmed. For example, if you have 35 points at the start of this phase, the first ghost takes out 15, leaving you with 20, and then you lose another 15, so you're at 5 prayer points now. The third ghost will not damage you, and you'll only lose your remaining 5 prayer points. So gauging your prayer points at the start of this special is a good way to avoid losing some prayer points throughout each kill. So assuming you're wearing the Spectral Spirit Shield, having 35 points by the time the ghosts are fully out is enough to avoid all damage in this phase. Now, to actually do this properly, there are 2 positions that I prefer in order to get myself set up. The first, as you can see here, is standing with my back to the giant skull, and the other is to the east of Cerb's spawn. This gives you a bit of a vantage point to see the ghosts before they're fully out. From here, you want to take note of the animation for each one as they're quite fast. So here is range, magic, and melee. So start off by praying whatever the first one is up, From there, swap prayers as soon as you see the animation occur and repeat. So see animation, swap prayer, see swap, see swap. And with that, we're ready to move on. This brings us to the lava pools, which are triggered by the grr overhead. These will only ever start appearing once Cerb has less than 200 HP. However, at least one of these pools will most likely damage you for 10 HP, unless you're paying close attention to Cerb and its attack cycle, which we'll cover in a little bit. One always spawns under you, and the other pools are random. Now, this phase by itself isn't too challenging at all. Just note if you're adjacent to a pool, it'll damage you for 7 HP, so keep at least one tile between you and the other pools. And unfortunately, if you do Cerb long enough, you're going to find yourself dealing with both ghost attacks and lava pools at the same time. And this is where most deaths at Cerb occur. To deal with this, think of the ghost phase like Jad and the healers. Select your prayer, do one action, and go back to your prayer. So swap prayer, look over to Cerb if you need to, click away, and then go back to your prayers. The biggest thing is getting comfortable in the room to avoid panicking. Healing up a little bit at the start of the ghost phase can help in case you take a little extra damage. Just remember your prayers take priority here and damage comes second. Alright, now it's time for a full kill. So I'll start by turning on my prayers, activating Ward of Arceuus and Thralls, go ahead spec, swap back. So for the combo attack, we have magic, then range, and then melee, and finally back to magic. And that's the combo attack. And from here, it's really just a matter of waiting for the ghost or the summoned souls. Since they don't ever spawn below 400 HP, this is the most relaxing part of the kill because nothing's going to happen basically. Alright, now we have the summoned soul, so go ahead, put the spectral shield on, and as we can see, melee's first, so I swap, action prayer swap, action prayer swap. And then it's just a matter of restoring prayer and putting the defender back on and turning prayer back on. And then we're good. From here, it's going to be a matter of just waiting to see if there are lava pools, more ghosts or whatever. But for this skill's pretty chill, nothing else happens. Now, what we saw there was a combo attack, but I didn't bother reacting to it. Like I said, I usually just tank them out of laziness. But yeah, there you go. And there's a full kill. So with that, let's jump into the next part of the video. Now we have the suicide method, and I personally don't use this because the longer trips go on, the more likely I am to zone out or just start messaging people, which always results in my death. But that said, this strategy is very simple. Load up an inventory with lots of food, prayer potion, superstore, Ceridome and brews, you know, the whole 9 yards, and basically just yeet yourself at Cerb. So all of those supplies can sit on the ground for the next hour. To make this even better, you can opt to take a wilderness looting bag full of stuff with you as well. Just remember you can only fill it in the wild, but this effectively gives you 2 inventories worth of loot for just 1 death. Now it's time for the fun part, the combat achievements. Up until now, this video has really only covered the 2 KC requirements and briefly touched on the anti-bite mechanic. So I think that's where we're going to start off with this section. Now, Cerb's melee attack in his combo will always hit the player, even at a distance. So here you can see I'm 5 tiles away, but I failed the challenge because I took melee damage. The only way to avoid this is by praying melee, or unless Cerb, happens to hit a 0. Luckily, it's pretty easy to do. As long as you see the magic and rapid range attack, then you know to pray melee to protect yourself. Provided, that's provided you missed the cue to see that the attack is coming. When you're at a distance, Cerb doesn't do the little head bob thing. He kind of just stands there for a hot second. For the Ghostbuster task, this is just a matter of not killing Cerb before it has time to unleash 2 ghost phases for you. So if you're intentionally hunting for this task, instead of getting it naturally, just get Cerb below 400 HP and wait for the ghost phases to show up and you'll be good to go. Now the next tasks and the final ones, unrequired antifire and arooo no more, are also things you can get through RNG pretty easily, I would say. But if you want to be intentional about completing these tasks, we'll need to dive deeper into Cerb's mechanics. And that brings us to this sheet. In short, it means that Cerb is actually quite predictable. We'll be using this to do ghost skipping, which is very useful for Iron Men as you use less potion. There are already guides on ghost skipping, but for the lava pool section, we're gonna have to add a couple of things. Now let's get into it. Cerb will not spawn ghosts if she's above 400 HP. She will only summon the souls on these specific attacks, 7, 14, 28. So if she's above 400 HP, those attacks will be replaced with a standard one. Now, after attack 14, the second ghost special, we can see that a ghost won't occur until attack 28, giving us 14 Cerb attacks to kill her without any interruptions. So for this, I'll be using Din's Bulwark, Ward of Arceuus, Thralls. I'm even taking a BGS since I figured most people aren't doing this with claws. And the rest of my invent is just a mix of prayer pots and food, which you can use however you want. So instead of counting to 14, what the community has figured out is that you can actually use a timer. So you attack the boss, turn on the timer, and then after the 56-second mark, you are free to go back to killing Cerb and you'll have skipped 14 attacks. Pretty cool. So what you do is you use your spec, you pray against her combo attack, and then you get her as close as you can to 400 HP. If you want, you can take off the arc light and kind of punch and inch your way to get a bit closer to that 400 mark. But at 96 strength and in this gear, I hit over a 30. But if you mess up, just walk out and reset her and you're good to go. If you're using claws, you want to use your spec after the 56-second mark. Now, once she's down, pull out the bulwark, step away and wait. The point of stepping away is to keep some distance to avoid those standard melee attacks. Now, not the most relevant, but I noticed that attack 11, the second combo attack, always happens at the 40-second mark, making it very easy to pray against. And from there, you just have 3 standard attacks until the time mark. From here, it's just a matter of killing the boss till it's dead. This part of the guide is focused exclusively on reliably skipping lava, or avoiding it. Using our attack sheet, we know lava specials trigger if Cerb's below 200 HP on attack 20 and 25. I have no clue if someone else has figured this out already or not, but I took the time to experiment and came up with the following strategy based on time, kind of like the 56-second ghost mark. With that said, you could do the exact same HP mechanic manipulation for the lava, but then you'd run a much greater risk of seeing a ghost special. So easier than that is going to be using a timer. And in my own testing, I got it down to a 1 to 2 seconds variation, which I'm assuming is a delay caused from clicking attack on the boss and then starting the timer. But it goes as follows. The first lava pool, if Cerb's below 200 HP, will trigger at the 1:116 mark, and if you're on the slower side, the second lava pool comes in at about the 140 mark. In my testing, I consistently needed to click away from Cerb to dodge the lava between 115 and 116, and then 139 and 140. After several runs, this is the most precise timing I could get. In some rare instances, it was about a 2-second variation, but not often. So for safety, look at Cerb a couple of seconds early since you know the next attack coming is a lava. This will help you with timing, and it's better to run a bit early rather than late and miss the achievement. Now in these clips, you see me using Dragon Claws because they're much more reliable for getting Cerb under 200 HP by the 116 mark. And as seen in this clip, I actually stopped attacking Cerb in order to get the second lava. And yeah, that caused me to fail the ghost attack, but I just wanted to show the timing on it. Now, when using the BGS, I could rarely get the DPS for this, even if I hit over a 70 with the spec. So depending on your gear and your luck and your stats, you may naturally not get any lava pools or just have one spawn, maybe get both. But I wanted to do my best to figure it out and kind of show you what all possible situations might look like. And that's it for the combat achievements. Now for the final part of this video. Arceuus versus no Arceuus. So we'll start with Death Charge. I found that I was able to guarantee 1 spec per kill up to 4 KC and in some instances even 5 KC. From there, I'd have to wait a kill and then I'd be back to normal for the rest of my trip. Now, not having these, you're out of spec energy after just 2 KC. That is arguably the best spell of the bunch. It takes up a rune pouch, but Cerb doesn't really spam you with alch, so I never miss not having them with me. Then there's Ward of Arceuus, which is much more straightforward. It takes up 3 runes, and if you take Death Charge with it, you'll need 2 inventory spaces to dedicate, as both share the need for soul runes. And in all likelihood, I bet this spell will save you enough damage to make up for the lack of Shark, so I'd say it's worth taking. And this spell probably will shine even more if you do the suicide method, as you'll be there longer and be absorbing more damage. Greater Thralls. In case you don't know, they ignore target defense when doing accuracy checks, so all 3 are equally powerful. However, ranged and magic have the advantage of not needing to walk to their target. It's 1 cast per kill, and if you're fast, the Thrall may even get a few hits in on the next Cerb before you need to recast. Now, Thralls do speed up your kills by a considerable amount, so you will be taking a bit less damage. However, you will use more prayer per trip, so this spell is a bit costly. That said, it will increase your kills per hour, since you can kill them faster. From my experience, Thralls don't really increase kills per trip, but they help increase the minimum per trip. So for example, Without any of the Arceuus spells, I found I could do anywhere from 4 to 8 KC. Usually I got 8 with a supply drop. Now with these spells and thralls, I could do 6 to 8 KC without getting any additional supplies from Cerb. So maybe it helps extend, maybe not, but it really does seem to help increase the minimum kills per trip. So in my opinion, they take up a lot, but they make up for it with their DPS. And lastly, their Sinister Offering, and that doesn't really do much here. So it restores 2 prayer per cast per ash. So with 3 ashes per cast, you'd get 6 prayer points, and that's probably not likely going to really help you, except for in rare instances, since you'll only be able to get the full effect after 3 kills. But it does have the potential to just tip you over the edge if you're really close to that threshold for the ghost special instead of sipping a whole prayer dose and then just losing it. But honestly, I prefer being lazy and just using the Ash Sanctifier. So I think it really comes down to whether or not you want to cast it for the prayer experience and keep it on standby if you think it'll help get you, over that threshold for maybe a kill. But in my experience, this is going to be the least useful spell of the bunch. And that's my take on Cerberus. A lot of work went into this video, so I'll say it again. I hope you enjoyed it, and if anything in here was useful, please drop a like or subscribe. It's all greatly appreciated. Anyways, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go do some RC now.